This week on Quality Digest Live, we talk about the Baldrige program. Did you know that it's more than just the Baldrige Award? It's a whole lot more. Joining us today will be Robert Fangmeyer, Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, otherwise known as NIST. So you don't want to miss out. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to Quality Digest Live. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest. Well, if you have worked in the quality field any time at all, you have probably heard of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. It's the highest level of national recognition for performance excellence that a U.S. organization can receive. The award focuses on performance in 5 key areas, and it is not easy to achieve the Baldrige Award. The criteria are very, very thorough. Implementation is all-encompassing, and the audit is also very thorough. Now, when most people hear the Baldrige program, that's what they think of. They think of the Baldrige Award. But there's a lot more to it, a lot more to the Baldrige Performance Excellence program, and it goes way beyond just the award. And here to tell us what's new at the Baldrige is Robert Fangmeyer, Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Hi, Bob. Thanks again for joining us.
Hi, Dirk. Thanks so much for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Well, most people, as I said, are familiar with the Baldrige Award, the award that's given out, the presidential award that's given out every year. So before we go into some of the other things that the program does, why don't you just give us an update on what's going on with that aspect of the Baldrige?
Great. Happy to. In fact, we are just about ready to celebrate our 2018 Baldrige Award recipients. In a couple weeks, April 7th, we will have our annual award ceremony, the 31st award ceremony for the Baldrige Award. And we will be honoring 5 organizations from 4 different sectors. We have a small business organization, integrated project management company from Illinois, 2 education organizations, Alamo College's district in San Antonio, Texas, Tri-County Tech from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We also have a healthcare organization, a Memorial Hospital and Healthcare Center in Jasper, Indiana. And finally, in the nonprofit category, we have Donor Alliance, which is one of the 58 independent, what's called organ procurement organizations, which save lives through organ and tissue donation and transplantation. So we're really excited about another opportunity to celebrate with our award recipients, and that'll be followed by our Quest for Excellence Conference, which runs from Monday through Wednesday, 8, 9, and 10 of April.
Wow. Now, one thing that always, we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning it again in case people haven't seen the other interviews, is it used to be back in the day when you talked about recipients of the Baldrige Award, they were almost all manufacturing. And now we see very, very rarely do we see actually a manufacturing winner. We see it very much in healthcare and education. And you do mention you do have one small business. And one nonprofit. But really, it seems to me that the education and the healthcare have really been the ones who have really embraced Baldrige in a big way. And why do you think that is?
Well, I don't disagree with what you said, but I would also add that small business has been fairly active in Baldrige over the last, I would say, 25 years or so. Manufacturing used to be the biggest category for the award. The one thing, though, that the application numbers and the award recipient numbers don't show is the number of organizations that use the Baldrige framework and our criteria as a leadership and management guide to help them improve their performance and ensure their long-term sustainability. And there are many organizations that do that with no intention of applying for the award. And we do know that there are a number of manufacturing organizations that are in that category. However, I do think that the move towards healthcare applicants certainly has been very strong and beneficial for the nation. Same with education and nonprofits. We would like to engage more manufacturers and service organizations because it is actually really important to have role models in those categories as well.
And what about the award process itself? I mean, has that changed much over the years? I mean, there was a big change to it actually several years ago, right? But are there some recent changes?
Yeah, there have been. And if I may, let me give you a little background and context to this, because this is sort of an extension of a lot of what we've been working on for the past 7 years. And that time frame is important, because for those of you who have been sort of following Baldrige, you'll know back in 2012, we lost our federal funding, which was 90% of our budget. And we had to very rapidly figure out how to survive and sustain this program on far, far less revenues and funds than we had before. And so we had to go through a process of really radically streamlining our key work processes, all of our operations, our staffing, while at the same time making sure that we designed, piloted, and implemented new product and service offerings that would provide more and better products and services to our customers, so that we could increase revenues and sustain the program. But that didn't eliminate our need to make sure that we were being very effective in our traditional operations as well, with the establishment of the framework and the award process and things associated with that. And so just a few of the things that we have done over the past 7 years or so include a wide variety of new offerings. Some of them are simplified self-assessment tools. We have some non-award assessments that we have implemented very successfully. We have an executive development program that is doing very, very well. And we also offer special training for individuals and organizations that want to learn but not necessarily participate in the traditional processes. And it's that mentality, it's that approach of figuring out how to make sure we are being as efficient and effective as we can, that has led us to this proposal for some pretty significant changes to the award process. Now, I think those of you who are familiar with Baldrige, and as Dirk said, the process is known to be very, very rigorous, and indeed it is. And I think that's important. We need to make sure that the Baldrige award process is effectively identifying role model organizations that we can be comfortable putting them upon that podium and saying, these are organizations that others can emulate and learn from and take home in terms of the lessons learned and their best practices to improve their own organizations. And so it's really important that no matter what we do with the award process, that we don't negatively impact the value of the process, nor the rigor or integrity of the Baldrige evaluation process. And so what we have attempted to do is step back and take a look and see, okay, we know the process works well, but can we come up with a way to achieve the objectives of the Baldrige process while reducing the amount of effort and time that's required for organizations to participate, for our volunteer examiners to participate, and even for our staff to participate. And we believe we have identified some ways that we can not only streamline the process and reduce the cycle time by nearly half, we also believe we can add significant value to the applicant organizations as well as the examiners. So we've been going through this process now for almost 2 years, and that might be what you're thinking of in terms of some announcement we made a couple of years ago. We have run a pilot. We are now piloting the changes through some of our sort of partner organizations, some of the state and regional Baldrige-based programs. And we're also running another pilot nationally here to make sure that the process is as effective and as good as we believe it is.
So just to interrupt for a second,
Sure.
You're not changing, let's say, the criteria or the requirements or the rigor, let's say, of the process. You've come up with a way to make it easier to apply, easier to what have you done there?
Okay, so we've actually broken it out into a couple different phases, if you will. This first phase we're looking at the evaluation process that is performed by the Baldrige examiners. Our volunteer workforce is around 400 people who give much of their time and effort to the program. And we want to make sure we're using their time and effort most effectively. And so what we have done is, frankly, we've looked at this process from a lean perspective, for one thing, and we've tried to identify where are there low value added steps, or in some cases no value added, but I'm not sure there were really any of those. Certainly some low value added steps that have been there for a long time. And at one time, they may have been adding some value. However, things have evolved, things have changed, and we needed to take a step back. And so we have identified a number of ways to streamline the process itself so that what the examiners do, everything they do, is adding value and is as efficient as it can be. So I think we've managed to do that quite well. The intent will be to move next beyond this phase into looking at the application component so that not only is it simple for the examiners to do their work, but it is easier for the applicant organizations to prepare their materials, their application for review, so that they don't have to commit quite as much time and effort as well.
Okay. Now, this something you said earlier is, and I've actually thought about this a little bit. You said back in 2012, big change for the Baldrige program when they lost their federal funding. Do you think that the process that you've gone through since then, and like you said, you got to kind of regroup. We don't have our federal funding. How are we going to do now? Do you think that's actually, strengthened the Baldrige, make you look at what you do differently, because now you've got to look for different, well, to be honest, revenue streams and so forth. Has that really had an impact?
Absolutely. I told staff as soon as this happened, I said, look, we're going to get through this and we're going to be better for it. And that's indeed the case. I will say we have gone from a situation where we had, frankly, all the resources we could ask for in order to develop and implement, you'll see a theme here, very rigorous processes, right? So we didn't have constraints on sort of how rigorous we could make a process. Strive for true perfection rather than looking at the process and saying, okay, what's optimal here? We would strive for perfection. So we really over-engineered a lot of our processes, and that's part of what we're working on undoing at this point. But you're right, we had to figure out how to operate differently, think differently, make decisions differently, and really come at it more from a true business perspective on how are we going to, not only meet our customers' needs and expectations, but sustain this program without the kind of funding support we used to have.
That's interesting, because what you're saying is ironically enough, the very same process that the companies that are going through the Baldrige process, what they have to do, right? Is like, well, we've got X amount of money we can spend. We've got these series of issues that need to be dealt with. Well, we can't address all of them because we don't have the money. So how do you prioritize? How do you make sure that you're addressing the ones that are most important? And really, which is kind of what the Baldrige criteria helps you to focus on, really.
That's exactly right.
So it's kind of like doing the Baldrige on the Baldrige.
That's exactly right. Yep. Trying to walk the talk, right?
Exactly. That's interesting. Okay, so it isn't just the Baldrige award process, which is what we've been talking about right now. I've seen you guys are starting to branch out in some interesting areas, cybersecurity. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I'm sure you and everybody listening has heard time and time again the critical situation we have in this nation regarding our cybersecurity. Every week there's another corporation that's had some sort of breach or something that is having massive impact on their ability to successfully meet their customers' expectations and sustain their organization. And so as cybersecurity has become ever more important to organizational success and sustainability, it's become more important to the Baldrige criteria and the Baldrige program. And frankly, cybersecurity has been in the framework since 2001. Now, that term didn't exist, but protecting your data and information has been in the framework since 2001, and that's the large part of what cybersecurity is. It's evolved from paper and hard copy stuff to all electronic over the years, right? But protecting our data and information has been there for some time. In 2017, we really beefed up cybersecurity in the Baldrige framework. And this year, with the release just in December of the 2019-2020 version of the Baldrige framework, it's been beefed up even more. But beyond that, we've partnered with NIST's Applied Cybersecurity Division, who is responsible for the creation and maintenance of what's called the cybersecurity framework locally. They have developed that over the past 3 years. It is in broad use across industry, and it is something that is recognized as a very strong tool to help organizations make sure they're doing the kinds of things that will enhance their cybersecurity. Well, coming at it from a Baldrige perspective, okay, they're doing a lot of stuff, but are they doing the right things? And is it effective? Right? So we partnered with the Applied Cybersecurity Division and a broad spectrum of industry representatives to explore the need and the potential for a Baldrige Cybersecurity Excellence Award. And while that piece is still sort of perhaps in the future, we did come to sort of the shared decision that really what's needed right now is a cybersecurity excellence builder, a tool, a self-assessment tool for organizations to make sure that, as I said before, that they are implementing very effective and optimizing their resource investments in cybersecurity and meeting their business needs as well as the needs of their customers.
So is this kind of like applying, in a sense, applying the Baldrige criteria, but focused on cybersecurity, but kind of still the same goals?
So I would say if you think of the Baldrige Excellence Framework, our criteria, as an organization-wide framework, which it is, right? And it helps you look at and lead, manage, and improve your organization as a whole. What this does is it helps you look at your cybersecurity activities with that systems perspective. So it looks at the leadership components to cybersecurity, the strategy components to cybersecurity, your workforce components to cybersecurity, your operational components to cybersecurity, et cetera, and helps pull those things together in a holistic framework that ensures that you are managing, leading, and improving your cybersecurity efforts with that same sort of holistic approach.
Okay. You have something else. What'd you tell me? Communities of Excellence.
Yeah. So
what is that? That sounds interesting.
This really is very interesting, and it has its roots in a couple of Baldrige Award recipient organizations. The CEOs of gosh, I'm not gonna remember the names right off the top of my head, but two of our award recipients from back in the early 2000s or so, when they retired, they were good friends, and they retired, and they were sort of talking about, how do we help solve some of these really difficult problems and challenges that our communities face today. I mean, we've all seen it in the news over the recent, number of years, and these challenges are very complex, and they are deeply tied to multiple interconnected root causes, such as low educational attainment, poor overall public health, poor economic opportunity, poverty, et cetera. And the traditional approach has been that there is an organization or an initiative or some effort to help address one of the symptoms. But there hasn't really been, at least not an effective approach to trying to look at this from a systems perspective and really understand how are these things interrelated, interconnected, and how do we solve those in a coordinated manner. And so traditionally you've got hundreds, maybe thousands of organizations in one way or another that are trying to address these problems, coming at it from their own perspective, and working in complete disalignment, if that's a word, right? They're working perhaps at cross purposes. The concept here is let's get the leaders of all those sectors, your education sector, your healthcare sector, your business sector, your government and nonprofit sectors. Let's get them together, have them establish sort of a vision for their community, identify the most critical challenges and problems, and really marshal the resources to develop an integrated and aligned approach, pulling from all of those different communities or sectors to work in a coordinated fashion to solve these problems. And this has been something that's really generating a lot of interest. And from a Baldrige perspective, for us, we've been trying to work at improving our nation's competitiveness by really addressing one organization at a time. This allows us, in conjunction with the Communities of Excellence 2026, it's a separate nonprofit organization, to really work at helping to improve entire communities at one time, which pulls in, obviously, hundreds perhaps of individual organizations. And so we think it's really sort of the next step for Baldrige, because it's taking that systems perspective and moving it from the individual organization to the entire community.
Well, actually, it's almost from the bottom up. I mean,
Yeah.
if you improve the communities, if you improve kind of the social structure and so forth, I mean, that is going to help enable companies up the chain. I mean, it's kind of a whole different approach. That's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly right. There's a ongoing effort by the Communities of Excellence 2026 organization. They have what they call a learning collaborative, and currently there are 13 communities across 8 states that are going through this year-long learning collaborative to use this sort of Baldrige-based approach to really identify their greatest challenges, what their vision is for the organization, and begin to address those things. So we're really excited about this. It really is generating a lot of interest. And in fact, there's a push to make communities the 7th Baldrige Award category. So we would have, theoretically, manufacturing, service, small business, healthcare, education, nonprofit, and then potentially communities.
That's amazing. I mean, that is actually, that's really cool. I mean, that is really forward thinking. I mean, and we see that. I mean, not just the Baldrige, but we're seeing that more and more too, where people are realizing that really, if you're going to help American business, you got to help more than just the businesses. You've got to start supporting what feeds into the businesses, whether it's through education or just health and welfare. I mean, you've got to have the right people ready to go, able to plug into a workforce in order to have a strong workforce and a strong company.
That's exactly right.
Yep. I don't want to let you go here without giving you a chance to talk about some of the things that, again, kind of going back to the Baldrige Award. You mentioned earlier a lot of people go through the Baldrige process, the award process, just to go through the process, just so that they can gain the value for their company that they have just going through it. So they may not go for the award, and you mentioned a couple different things to me earlier. You mentioned, I think you mentioned training, and also there's just you have, I can't remember what it's called, but you have a program just for companies that want to go through the Baldrige without going for the awards. Can you just kind of briefly talk about those two things?
Sure, absolutely. I'll start with the latter. What you're thinking of is what we call the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment.
Right.
And the idea here is to provide a service to organizations that really aren't interested in the award for one reason or another, but they are interested in the value of having an external group of experts come in, review their organization, and help them, work with them, truly collaborative in a very joint manner, work with them to identify really what are their most important strengths that they need to leverage and their opportunities that they need to work on addressing. And it's been a tremendously favorable response to that for the organizations that have participated. And they really do, because they get to work in hand with the Baldrige examiners, which is really not the process with the award, because we have to ensure that the team is very objective, that they are making sure that they are providing our judges with objective information about the organization, and the judges get to determine whether or not they should be a role model award recipient. But in this process, they can get vested in your organization as much as they want, really, and just work to help them get better. And it's really been very tremendous. The other one you were thinking of is what we call the Baldrige Examiner Training Experience. And this was actually something that was one of those things that we were thinking about. Okay, you know, we need to come up with some additional revenue streams, as you mentioned. And for years, we had individuals say, hey, you know, I can't serve as an examiner, but you know, I really would like to go through training. Can I just audit the class and not actually be an examiner? And for years, we were turning people down. Said, you know, sorry, we don't want to disrupt the class. We're afraid someone just sitting there would have an impact on the learning experience for the examiners. We've got to focus on them. And that was all true, but what we failed to step back and realize was, well, why don't we just pull them in and treat them like a regular examiner, have them do all the pre-work that the examiners do, have them engage just like the examiners will, and we charge them a small fee. And that's what we've done, and that's actually been a nice little revenue stream for us, and it really has met the need of a lot of individuals. We'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 folks come through that program every year.
So what's the purpose for them? Is it that are they somehow applying that back at their organization, in what way?
Absolutely. So there's many of them will come through because their organization is perhaps on a Baldrige journey. They are working through the framework, right in response to the criteria, et cetera. And they want to understand, you know, how is this really done? They want to look at it from the examiner perspective. That's one group of people. Okay. Others learn about it because they do, but they want to just bring it back and use it in a more generic way to help their own business unit improve, or perhaps if they have a position that allows them to help their entire organization improve. Some folks will come through because they want to be able to do a better job of providing advice and guidance to organizations that are looking to improve their performance. So there's a number of reasons people participate, but they all do it because of the learning that they can achieve and the benefit they get from it.
All right. Well, there is a lot going on at the Baldrige for sure. Well, thanks for the update, Bob. We appreciate it. That's Robert Fangmeyer, Director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program at NIST. And like I said, if you think the Baldrige is just the award, well, as you just heard, it is a lot more than just the award, including the very intriguing Communities of Excellence, which I think is a fantastic program. So that is it. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Dirk. Really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. Well, that is it for today. Thanks for joining us here on today's Quality Digest Live. If there is a topic, a person that you'd like to have us on the show, let us know by sending your email to qdl@qualitydigest.com, and we will do our best to bring them on the show. That's it. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. So long.